Hello and good afternoon to everyone, to all our participants joining the fifth and last webinar in this series of ELT talks organized by the British Council Argentina. This time co-hosted with Susan Hilliard's Teacher Academy. My name is Graham Stanley and I'm the programs lead for the Americas, the English programs lead for the Americas at the British Council. And it's my pleasure to be your host today. Today, we'll be talking about practicing inclusion in your classroom. This is a topic that is very important for us and one we've made an effort to learn and understand more about so we can share tools and strategies with teachers all over the world. Now, I know some of you have participated in these webinars before, but if you haven't been able to join us, you can always go back to our YouTube British Council Americas channel and look for the playlist ELT Talks Argentina. And I'm hoping someone will put the link into the chat to make it easier for you to do that. Now, let me remind you of our house rules. You're welcome and encouraged to share your comments and questions, but please make sure that you maintain a respectful and positive communication. And remember, not share any personal or sensitive information. And please know that harmful, violent, or inappropriate comments will not be tolerated. We will deactivate the chat briefly at the beginning and at the end of this session so we can post some links of interest. And the Q&A function will be available during the entire session. So please write your questions there and we'll do our best to go through them all during the talk or at the end of the session. As always, I'd like to thank our supporting partners, the Teaching Touch, Plan Up Education and Twinkle Argentina, and you'll find in the chat links to their excellent content. Now, let me welcome our speaker today, Susan Hilliard. Susan has a B.Ed Hons degree from Warwick University in the UK. She has played many roles in her long career. She's former deputy of the Special Needs Department of Camden Court Comprehensive UK and also former coordinator of English in Action, training 20 teachers to teach English through drama in special education in Buenos Aires. Presently, she's founder and director of Shelter, Susan Hilliard's English Language Teachers Academy, and a freelance consultant for EMI and drama with the British Council in China. She's an expert presenter in face-to-face interactions and also on video conferencing apps, having conducted hundreds of conferences. Her main interest is to empower teachers to motivate both themselves and their students to become lifelong learners. So now, without further ado, welcome, Susan.
My screen with you and we'll get started. There we go. I hope it's clear on your screen and I hope you can hear me very well. Give me a shake of your hand if you can. Can't see very many people, but thank you. I'm getting some thumbs up. That's great. Thank you. As you've heard from Graham, I've been in special needs education for 10 years within my very long career of 50 years. Don't tell anybody, please. And I've always been fascinated with how we can work with these students who have varying degrees of specific needs. We call it specific needs these days. And so I'm very happy with the toolkit that the British Council Argentina has brought out for all of you teachers who are also interested. So I've called it Busting the Mystery of How to Practice Inclusion in Your Classroom, because it is a bit of a mystery. We talk about it a lot, but we don't have very many answers as to how to actually do it. So that's what I'm hoping we're going to be able to do today. So If you have any questions, please put them in the question and answer box, and Graham will ask me towards the end. I can't see you, but I'm hoping that you are strong today and that you will join in with me in a number of active activities that I have designed for online learning. So first of all, would you like to show me with your bodies how you feel today? Look at these screen beans, which I love, and tell me how you're feeling today. Are you tired? Are you bored? Are you excited? Are you thrilled? Are you jumping about? I would love to be able to see you. So I hope that all of you are doing something in your own Zoom rooms. It's called a check-in. And one of the things we should always do with our students, whether we're teaching in class or whether we're teaching on Zoom, and this toolkit was originally designed for Zoom, although it works in classrooms as well, of course, you should always do a check-in with the students to find out how they are feeling, what their emotions are at this moment. Because I believe, and I have seen it throughout my career, that many students come to the classroom feeling anxious. Because one of the things that's most frightening to almost everybody, apart from death, is the idea of having to speak out aloud in public. And that's even in people's first languages. In the second language, it's even harder. So try to put your students at ease by doing a check-in and talk about their feelings, maybe doing some breathing exercises, maybe doing some warm-ups with them to release the anxiety before you start. It's something that we need to do with our students. If you'd like to take out your phones and take a shot to download the toolkit directly, you've already got your free copy. It's almost like a whole book, and it's full of advice and tips and principles and strategies, which I'm going to go through with you today. I won't be able to go through all of them, obviously, but I have selected as many as I think I can fit in. And as I said before, any questions are welcome. So please spread the toolkit around to your colleagues, your friends, your teachers, if you happen to be a teacher trainer, and let them have this gift from us today. Great. This is what the toolkit looks like. And if you didn't manage to take a screenshot, you can get it here at bit.ly/sen-toolkit, and you will get the whole booklet. These are the modules that are contained in the booklet. Please don't feel afraid, because you don't have to be a special needs trained teacher to be able to understand this booklet. This is for every teacher in every classroom around the world. We're not talking about specific needs schools. We're talking about ordinary mainstream classrooms where you are bound to have some specific needs. It's inevitable. So how do you deal with them? I've got a lot of messages in the chat. I'm probably not going to be able to read them. The modules are 7 in number, and each one is color-coded. So besides the check-in, the other thing is to use colors for coding. Many students need this. They need things to be colored in a particular code so they can understand where they are and they can navigate what's going on in the classroom or on Zoom. So module 1 is why do we need inclusive teaching strategies? And it's yellow. Module 2, how to manage the environment for everybody, and it's in orange. Module 3, how to give inclusive instructions, and it's red. Module 4, how to set up inclusive interactions, and that is fuchsia pink. Module 5 is purple, and it's how better to present information for different needs. Module 6 is a kind of turquoisey green, how to differentiate learning online. And module 7 is how to build belonging online. And it's a kind of jade green. It was hard for me to find those exact colors, but I've done as well as I could. So the structure of each module is exactly the same. It goes through index, introduction, case study, and then questions about why and what benefits our students and you are going to get, which all come from research. And then each principle within that particular question is examined. And the strategies for each principle are laid out very, very clearly for you. The next section is Check Your Understanding, which is a section on small, short exercises for you to check and go back, if you wish, in the toolkit. And then there's a section which I think is really important, which is apply in practice what you have just learned and what you have just understood. And then once you've applied it in practice, we advise you to get into small groups of, say, four teachers from your school or from your neighborhood or from your province, and have a group discussion with reflection on what you have learned. I'm going to show you something more about that in a moment. So the index for module 1, which is yellow, shows you what you have to complete. So everything is very, very clearly laid out, just as we hope you will lay out your classroom practice to include your students with specific needs. So you have 6 sections to complete in module 1. In different modules, it's a different number. There's the introduction. There's a general overview of why we need a toolkit for inclusive teaching strategies, excuse me. And then there are 3 principles in this module. Principle 1, take a proactive approach. In other words, think before you do anything and decide on how you're going to do your lesson plan, what you're going to include, etc., etc. But do that before you get into the classroom. Principle 2, understanding how barriers affect progress. And most of our students have got some barriers, some more than others, but most of us have our own specific needs, in fact, and I'll show you why. Principle 3, a one-size-fits-all approach, which is what we've been using in education for many years, benefits no one. It's as though I am a coat manufacturer, coat designer and manufacturer, and I decide on one style with one color in one size. And that's all I produce. And then people come to me and they don't like the color, so they want a different color, but haven't got one to offer them. They don't like the style, they would like something different, but I haven't got that to offer them. And anyway, it doesn't fit them. It's either too big or too small. So that's what we mean by a one-size-fits-all in education. Then you apply the strategies and then you put it into practice. This is the reflection at the end of module 1. Every single module has the reflective process, and the actual discussion group procedure is all worked out for you. So teacher A does this and it lasts for 10 minutes. Teacher B does this and it lasts for 10 minutes. Teacher C does the case study and it lasts for 15 minutes. Teacher D does the group reflection and it lasts for 15 minutes. What more could you ask for? Seriously, it's very, very well designed. So these are your questions in your toolkit, which I've just told you about, and they are in a color-coded chart. So you know exactly what each module is about. So can you skim and scan very quickly? I'm not going to read them out again to you. And then we'll get on with looking at them in more detail. Remember to put your questions in the question and answer box rather than in the chat. I am going to ask you in a moment to put some things in the chat. So I'd like you to think for 1 minute in silence. Don't go to Google or ask Mr. Google anything. What is your definition of inclusion? What do you think inclusion means? Just in one sentence, one short sentence. So can you write it in the chat box, please? And I will take a look. You feel a part of the group. Everybody feels comfortable. To respect diversity, we've got several of those. A sense of belonging, yes. To be in rather than out, excellent. To be integrated, very good. To make your teaching accessible for every single student in your room. Taking everyone into account in learning, engaged, belonging, creating conditions for every learner to feel accepted and to have conditions to learn. Hi, Malgosia. We all can work together performing different tasks according to our capacities. Oh, you know a lot already. I don't know if you want to go home already. No, please stay. Because I'm going to give you lots more tips and tricks. Great, we're all sailing in the same boat. I love these metaphors. Thank you so much. Carry on adding while I carry on talking. That's great. To adapt to conditions. Perfect. Okay. Module 1 then. It's an overview of the toolkit. Principle 1, take a proactive approach. Principle 2, understanding how barriers affect progress, and we can talk about barriers in a moment. Principle 3, a one-size-fits-all approach benefits no one. This is in the introduction, and in each module, we have a case study. So before we start, I want you to listen to the case study, which I am going to tell you. And then I want you to think if you have any students like Marco in your classes. And you can also write that in the chat box if you'd like to tell us what kind of students that are like Marco, I should say, who are in your classes. Now, Marco is a 14-year-old boy in your class. When he comes to his Zoom meeting or his classroom meeting, he often forgets to bring his homework, or he hasn't completed his homework and doesn't want to hand it in. He doesn't turn his camera on because he doesn't want to face the music. He doesn't want to face any problems. He finds it difficult to organize himself, and he finds it difficult to understand his homework and what he has to do. And in language classes, when you're doing presentations of concepts, he appears bored and uninterested, and sometimes he doesn't appear to understand what you're actually saying or how to follow the instructions or do the tasks. He doesn't enjoy reading long texts, but he actually speaks quite well in class. And when you're doing creative group activities, he himself is very participatory and he is engaged in being creative. So please write in the chat box if you have any students like that in your classes, so that you are recognizing me. More than one. Okay, yes, you do. Okay, I think we can all find some resonance with that. Okay. So what do we really mean by inclusive? What have we looked at in Marco? Where are his barriers? And what behaviors do your students show? So if you'd like to think about what makes them feel excluded rather than included, we'll be well on the way to understanding all the principles and the strategies. So if you have a new definition of inclusion, please write it in the chat box. So please respond in the chat box to these questions. Yes, in different classes, probably in all your classes. So if you can write down the behaviors that you see in class, which show you that your students feel excluded. Okay, so if you can write in the chat box, and I'll move on. Okay, our definition is that inclusion is the participation, progress, and success of every child in our classroom. Some may participate more than others, but we want everybody engaged. Some may progress more than others. Some may experience more success more than others, but this is what we're aiming for. We don't want anybody excluded. We don't want anybody to feel they don't belong because they can't cope. So that's module 1. Module 2, creating and managing the environment for everybody. Principle 1 is leverage the physical environment. So whatever it is, whether it's on Zoom or in the classroom, use the environment. Don't just stick to what you're doing in your lesson, which comes out of the textbook. Try to keep the text and change the task. Strategy 1, plan for interruptions. You're bound to have interruptions in both types of classrooms. Plan for them. Think about what interruptions you may have and work out what you will do if it appears, if it comes up. Strategy 2, tasks should be appropriate to the environment, and strategy 3, appropriate to the device. Find out if you're on Zoom, what devices your students are actually using, and make sure that they can do those activities on their devices. So don't give them things they cannot do. In Zoom, it's important that we use the house, that we use the room, that we use our students' belongings. So have them going off to find things that you ask them for. Have them going off into the kitchen and getting some ingredients and coming back and showing you what utensils they've brought or what ingredients they've brought. Have them making food faces when they have their dinner. Take photographs of their food faces and put them up on your blog or on your Padlet. And module 2, going on to principle 2, improve communication in the digital environment. I would say include communication in any environment. Manage how the learners collaborate. So on Zoom, you cannot keep them sitting there like I'm going to be keeping you sitting there for 1.5 hours without moving. So you've got to help them move into breakout rooms, help them move from one breakout room to another room if you know how to do that, and manage how they really collaborate. Give them opportunities to work together. And make sure that on Zoom in particular, and in the classroom, you improve your visuals. And then module 3, principle 1, prepare for instruction delivery. Think about available technology that you can add in. Use multisensory delivery and look for learner feedback and do frequent comprehension checks. Ask the students to explain to the class what they've got to do. Ask a student to do a demo with you. And never, never, ever, ever in your long-legged life say, do you understand? Because what will they all do? They will all nod their heads for many reasons. Say instead, explain to me what you have to do. I can see somebody's laughing at that point. We have to use multisensory delivery, and we have to appeal to all the senses, the VAKST, for students' learning styles. You're going to have students in your classroom who are more dominant in learning visually, or more dominant in learning auditorily, or more dominant kinesthetically. Some of them may have a very strong sense of smell or a very strong sense of taste. So make sure that you cater for all these learning styles in one lesson. I'm not saying it's simple, but I am saying it's important. Pin up your instructions with written words or images so that your verbal instructions appeal to your visual learners and your kinesthetic learners, because they understand better written words or images. Make sure that your instructions are clear and uncluttered. Don't have too much on the page or on the slide or on the screen. Make audio recordings of your instructions on phones for their reference, either before they come in or after the lesson. Use colors with meaning, as I've said before. Use electronic timers, they like that. And use those spinning boards, can't remember what it's called, Madiometer or something like that. Suggest ADHD students can bring in fiddlers to fiddle about with so that they can concentrate when they're fiddling. They need that. Use demos with mime and movement and gather together your realia. Your realia are things that you've got at home or that you have collected. For example, I have in my special bag my perfume bottle, and whenever we're having story time, I spray in the classroom so that it's a clue for your students. All your students can smell, and it's a clue for, oh, now we have to move to the story time area. And always have a ball in your bag so that you can throw the ball to students. So you don't have to say Juanita, or you don't have to say Laura, or you don't have to say David. You simply throw the ball to them and they know that they are being asked. Online, you can do it by saying their name and pretending to throw the ball and ask them, hold out your hands because I want you to be ready to catch it. Or you can have gifts that you give them in your bag, and you pass the gift around and you say, ooh, what do you think is in this box? Smell it, shake it, listen to it. Can you hear anything in there? What do you think my gift to you is? Why don't you open it now? And why don't you tell us? Okay, are you ready to receive the gift? Okay, Graham, I can see that you're ready. Make sure you've got your hands out, okay? Here's the box coming down. Woo! Good, you caught it. So then they unwrap the box and they tell everybody what the gift is and why they like it. It's a beautiful exercise and it's very, very easy to do. I also have my witch's hat and I also have my wand, which has just fallen on the floor. So take as many things into the classroom for your lesson as you can gather together before you go into the classroom. And now we're going to be doing some movement. Oh, after this, actually. Personalize it. Ask your students, what's your favorite sight? What's your favorite touch? What's your favorite taste? What's your favorite smell? What do you like to hear most of all? And then pair them off. And in pairs, Juan can say to Sol, Sol, I want you to see such and such a thing, which is his favorite sight. And I want you to draw it for me. And Sol can say, Juan, I want you to see, and you can go on through all the senses. Try to personalize everything you can. And then we have to do multisensory delivery. Okay, you've all been sitting on your bums for half an hour. So now we're going to stand up, and I hope you're going to join in with me, because if you don't know what this exercise feels like. If you do, you will know exactly how it feels. I'm going to teach you this acronym, SPICE, which I made up many, many years ago, about 50 years ago, when I first started teaching, because I wanted to cater for everybody, and this helps me a lot. So I want you to take your hard work pointing finger, and I want you to point up to the ceiling, and I want you to do an air streaming S with me. We're all going to be snakes today. So you're going to go and do a big S in the air. Are you ready? Notice that we're doing visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. Ready, and. What does th stand for? What can you think? Are you writing in the chat box? Let me see. Anybody's writing in the chat box. What does S stand for? Spreading. Oh, that's nice. Silence. No. I don't have much silence in my classes except when I really want it. Sweet. That's nice. For me, sight, it stands for social. Every student needs to have his social development grown inside your classroom. So be aware that learning is a social, think about Vygotsky, is a social endeavor, and make sure it happens in every single classroom. So social development. Now we're going to do P. Ready? Hard work pointing fingers in the air. Mine's disappearing. I'm doing my magic even without my witch's hat on. Ready? And P, 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 P. P with the H for physical development. We must teach our students body language. English language body language is not the same as Italian language body language or Chinese language body language. So we have to teach it. And we have to teach our students to stand up straight, chin up, back straight, and look confident, even if they're not feeling confident. So P is for physical development. Good. Okay, so write it down in the box, please. Physical development. Now we're going to do I, and we're going to say if. Ready, steady, go. If. Okay, I for intellectual development. We must develop the students' cognitive skills if we're going to keep them interested. It's very, very important to include the arts and to include thinking skills. Look at Bloom's taxonomy, learn how to use it if you don't already know. I could do another 2 hours on this one letter. Okay, now we're going to do our pointing fingers, very good, social development, physical development, and we're going to say k, k. Make sure you don't say ka, please, or it's not going to sound very nice. K, 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 k for creative development. Some students just cannot learn a language if it's not creative. Collaborative would have been good also. But in my sense, I use it for creative development because within creative development, you have so many other things. And now we're going to do E, E. Ready? Hard work, pointing fingers. E, 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 E. E for emotional. Yes, Celeste. Emotional development. Some people talk about SEL, social and emotional learning. I talk about much more than that because I add in physical, intellectual, and creative. And I think we need all 5 in every lesson. So you've got several checklists there to help you. Have them next to your lesson plans when you're writing, and make sure you include all of those things in your lesson. So throw yourself the ball for SPICE and for VAK. Okay, great, we're doing well. Module 3, how to give inclusive instructions. This is principle 2, provide scaffolding. Scaffolding is something that we always have to do. One way is to do the I, we, you modeling strategy, which we've actually just done with the SPICE, because I showed you how to do it. We did it together, I hope. And then you can go off on your own now and apply it to your lesson plans. If I've taught it to you very well, and if you have learned it very well. Strategy 2, use screenshots to show steps. Students need the steps. Strategy 3, record yourself setting the task or modeling it as a process for reminding and for reference, so the students can be reminded all the time of what you've done. You know how sometimes you teach a lesson and you think everybody's got it, and then when you ask the next day or the next week, it's like nobody got it at all, or maybe 1 or 2 of them. So you always have to keep checking back, revising, recycling, because the memory doesn't always work as well as we teachers like to think it does. I sometimes go to conferences and I wonder what people actually take home with them from the conference. And then module 3 has 3 principles. And the third one is use narratives and advanced organizers. Tell your story in story form, if you can. Once upon a time, there was the first conditional. Make it into a story. And use an online board that you can share with students to show the menu or the agenda or the whatever you want to call it, the list of things you're going to do in any one class, and give your reasons for the lesson so the students have an understanding of what's going on. And then strategy 2, create an online board or use a digital project management form where you can actually move things around from to do to done, or some way of ticking off on the board what you've actually finished. Okay, this is a Padlet. Imagine, please write in the box how many of you are using Padlet, because I think it's really important to use these sharing collaborative boards. Don't worry, we're going to share all the links and the resources you will have all in one booklet. So don't worry, you'll have all that, no problem. I love Padlet too, and I love the way you can actually use it in class. That's the greatest thing about it for me. I've used it with all my online courses that I do with teachers. As Graham told you, I have my own academy for teachers. And we introduce ourselves and we talk about what we're doing and we put things up for other people to share. And it's a really lovely resource. Module 4, I'm rushing. How to set up inclusive. This is interactions. We've had instructions. Now we've got interactions. Principle 1, well, we've said this already. Include collaboration, social development. Create expectations for the best kind of group and peer work that the students can do. Don't just say get into groups and do it. Tell them what you want them to do in the groups and how you want them to do it. Set up circle time so that they learn to listen to each other. Give your learners sentence stems to get them going so that they know how to ask questions, so that they know how to define things, so that they know how to answer your questions. So if anybody's got any sentence stems, please put them in the chat so we can share here online. Oh, it is amazing, absolutely. Strategy 3, make your groups with different strengths and abilities. So know your students, know what your students can do, know what kind of senses they have dominant, know what kind of learning styles they have dominant, and use the spice. Make sure you put the weak ones with the strong ones, but don't keep them like that the whole year. Move them about, let them get used to listening to other people with other opinions and with other abilities. And strategy 4, set simple tasks for learners to collaborate. Make sure the tasks aren't too complicated. You know, when you give out a handout and the students turn around to each other and say, Kedika, this isn't what we want. We want them to be able to understand the instructions, whether they're written or verbal, and not have to say, Kedika. We want them to process information, and we have to teach them for that. You can make groups with different roles and abilities. This is an example. There are many, many more. The table leader, the materials manager, the scribe, that's the one who is the secretary, and then the cleanup crew. And of course, you can change them round. You can get so much stuff online these days. It's just amazing. Module 4, how to set up inclusive interactions again. This is principle 2. Help your learners interact more easily with the learning materials. Strategy 1, give the learners a model or an example of the finished task to work from that helps them. We don't want them copying, we want them using it as a model. So you have to give very clear instructions. Strategy 2, give learners any verbal instructions in written form with pictures as clues or objects as clues, and try to get into some kind of routine. Module 4, principle 3, balance the listening and the doing. There should be some listening, there's got to be, otherwise you're not teaching, but there's got to be more doing than we presently have in our classrooms. You only learn something by doing it, trying it, experimenting with it. When you're planning the lesson, make sure you get a balance. And then strategy 2, Plan your lessons starting with what you want the learners to be able to do at the end and work backwards planning, I always call it. So know what you want them to be able to do and work backwards from that and see how you can scaffold it to reach your aim. Module 5, plan your lesson starting with what you want the learners to be able to do at the end of the lesson. Chunk up the information. Use an online whiteboard or tool like Jamboard or Miro, or a collaborative document like Google Docs if you're working online. Or in the classroom, you can still incorporate these things for homework. Now we've got AI. I am learning so many things that we can do. It's amazing, but that's another whole webinar. And strategy 2, give the learners the opportunity to categorize information so that they can see classifications themselves. Give them things like flow charts, Venn diagrams, staircases, all sorts of things. When we say chunk it up, I want you to think of a bar of chocolate. A bar of chocolate very often has 6 or 8 pieces divided into chunks within the whole bar. You don't put the whole bar in your mouth and eat it all in one go. You chunk it up, you break it up into edible pieces. So what I want you to do is to read this number and try to remember all the digits, okay? Now I want you to write it in the chat box. Ooh. Some very good visual learners here. I couldn't do this. I am a visual learner, but I'm no good at remembering lists. So what I would do as a teacher to help people like me is to chunk it up. Divide it into 3 numbers, 3 digits, and 4 digits. And that's why it's much easier if you chunk up information. So it helps them to be able to remember it in their short-term memory at first. Then we have to work on it to get it into their long-term memory. Module 5, Principle 2, show the big picture of the lesson so that you provide the learners in advance with the aims and the outcomes so they know where they're going. It's like a pathway. So you signal the pathway. Oops. Strategy 2, provide a digital course or lesson outlines with editable space. So the lesson outline is there, but give them space to add their own notes or ideas or reflections. And strategy 3, create a visual diagram of how the lesson fits together. Design a pyramid or a flow chart. These are visual aids that you can use in the classroom. Manipulatives, or students' bodies can do sequences as well. Flashcards, picture books, Feely box. Play Kim's game with them for memory practicing. And principle 3, activate the different senses. Well, we've said that already. But move around, let them move even if they are on Zoom. Let them move in the classroom. Let them use their phones for the purposes of the lesson, not for anything else. And do reading and body movements, for example, percussion or clapping or reading and sound. Use music or melodies to help them learn, to help them be involved. And strategy 3, assign homework like the foodie faces. Eat a meal and then write about it, or eat a meal and make a food face and take a photo. Experiment with using scents, perfumes, to promote memory. So these are some ideas from for module 5. We can do a little language game that I like a lot, and it's difficult to do it on Zoom, but I'll just demonstrate it to you. We do 2 slaps on our knees, 2 claps with our hands, and hitch hike. So join in with me. And then we set up something like, for example, a word association game. I can only speak on the hitch hike. So I go black, white. The next person picks up white, snow. Snow, cold. Cold, hot. Hot, sun. Sun, yellow. Yellow banana, etc., etc. And there are lots of types of games you can do with that. It's called divided attention. And it works very, very well with many of our students. Don't be afraid to try it. And then we can do soundscapes for certain comprehension texts that we're using. We can do soundscapes where we ask the students, if we're doing a comprehension about a football match or a rugby match or going to the beach or going to town, we can dish out different roles within the sound. So let's ask our students, what sounds do you hear when you're at a football match? What different kinds of sounds do you hear? Then you divide them into groups, and each group makes that sound singly to begin with, and everybody identifies it. Then they put them together with their groups, speaking 2 groups together, 3 groups together, 4 groups together, and 5 groups together is when you've got your whole soundscape. It's beautiful. It's like working in a choir, but it's with sounds. So you could do shh for the trees. You could do for the rain. You could do for the wind. You could do for the sea. So you could make up all sorts of different sounds and put it together. If you've done lots of songs with your students, you can ask them to look very closely at your mouth, and you can mouth a song and ask them, which song was that? Do you recognize this one? Did anybody get it? I wonder. I don't know if you even know that. Okay. Nobody got it. It was ba ba black sheep. Ah, yes. It's good. Great. Thank you. Ba ba black sheep. And then find a song that represents a text or a picture or a comprehension passage that they can relate to. So ask them to do comparisons, comparatives, and help them feel included by using strategies. I have not finished yet. Don't go yet. Module 6, how to differentiate learning online. How are you going to cater for all these things? You've got the content. That's what the learners learn. What the learners learn. Strategy 1, vary the way you present the information in class. Well, we've talked about that through the SPICE and through the VAK-ST. Record a video of yourself presenting what was previously written content. So instead of just presenting the content in writing, make a video of it, of you doing it. Make a video of you demonstrating it. Make a video of you actually saying it in the video. Principle 2, now we're going to work on the process, how they learn. Set their work to be asynchronous. So they don't all have to do it at exactly the same time. They can do it in their own time. Provide space for collaborating with other learners in groups or in breakout rooms, but make sure you do actually provide that. It's no good talking about it. You have to do it in space and in time. And obviously plan your breakout rooms or your stations with different inputs, so they're not all getting the one size, which doesn't fit all. And then principle 3, the product, how learners demonstrate their understanding of the knowledge or the skills that they have learned. Presenting work visually in a slide deck or on a platform. So you give them choices. Use choice boards where you give them 6 or 10 or 9 different options where they can bring their own strengths to the classroom. Ask them to submit. A boy like Marco, for example, and you have different case studies in every module, remember. Marco would be much better to submit a video recording answering the assignment than writing. So find ways of doing it. And strategy 3, use group work where they take on different roles depending on their strengths, and give them offline assignments so that they can complete a hands-on activity with materials. We've already talked about that, really. This is a Jamboard, which I've used to write a story, collaborative story. So this is a nice way of doing a collaboration. It's asynchronous because they do it in their own time, but it's also their own original work. And then finally, module 7, how to build belonging online and in the classroom. There's not that much difference between it, actually. You've all been teaching online, so you know that it's slightly more difficult online. But it's also important in the classroom. If you're not doing group work, you're probably going to have students who feel excluded. Because if you're doing individual work, they're always going to be comparing themselves to somebody else. Okay, principle 1. Represent learners and their lived experiences. Because you can't be what you can't see. If you don't have a model for what you're going to sound like, what you're going to look like, what you're going to feel like, that comes from the teacher or from videos or from songs, they are not going to see the value of learning the language. So make sure that you represent all of your learners. Invite them to contribute to lesson planning. I've done this many times in my life. And at first they look at you and they say, well, you're supposed to be telling us what to do, aren't you? You're supposed to be doing all the lesson planning, not us. But then once they get the idea that you listen to them and you make the content their content as well as your content, then they begin to feel different about the whole thing. And then strategy 2, make the content local. Strategy 3, personalize the tasks. We've already said that. Principle 2, support learners to bring their whole self to the lesson, to be present. So you must use mindfulness exercises so that they feel that they are there in the present and they feel that they are worthy to be there. As I said, I've worked a lot with specific needs students. In my first job, in fact, I had 18 students for 18 periods a week, teaching them for 4 different subjects. And they came from 7 different countries with 11 languages between them. They were between 13 and 14 years of age, and they still couldn't read or write. So I was told, it was my first job, remember, I've just come out of university and I've got my degree clutched to my very, very nervous breast. And I'm thinking I'm like Florence Nightingale shining the torch on the wounded soldiers of education and helping to cure them. No, it wasn't like that at all. I cried every single night. So I know what it's like, but there are solutions. And I found my solutions through developing the spice, because I asked myself, where am I able to get these students to come to me? How can I reach them? How can I reach before I teach? Because if you can't reach them, you cannot teach them. So look at yourself and find out where you are creating the barriers, besides the barriers they've already got. So try your very best to criticize yourself reflectively and fully, and ask people, come in and observe me. Tell me what I'm doing wrong. Why is it that I can't get these students to bring themselves fully to the lesson? I can promise you, do you believe me? I hope you do. Say yes in the chat box if you believe me. If you believe me, I can promise you it works. But you have to do it on you. They can't do it. They're too little. They're too young. They're teenagers with all the hormones all coursing through their bodies, which are much more interesting than you in the classroom. So you've got to lure them to your screen. These are screenagers with hormones. So use check-in activities, as we did right at the very beginning. Consider safe and creative ways to introduce the check-in. I have like 99 different check-ins, and I'm always creating new ones depending on my class. So for example, one is, are you tea or are you coffee, and why? Not which do you like, there's a difference. Are you tea or are you coffee? Are you a mountain or are you a valley? Why do you say that about yourself? Ask them. Get pictures of animals, fruit and fish, which are different, and ask them, which are you feeling like today? And why do you feel like that? And then a very nice exercise I learned in 2020, you ask a student, Pedro, you know what I love about you? And they always shake their heads because they don't think anybody loves them because they're so naughty. And I say, come on, what do I love about you? And they think for a moment and they say, ah, my smile. And I say, yes, I love that about you. That wasn't the thing I was thinking of at the moment. Pedro, what do I love about you? They think again and they say, because I always carry your bag for you, miss. Yes, I love that about you, but that wasn't what I was thinking of at the moment. Pedro, what do you think I love about you? And the third thing they say, you say, yes, that's exactly it. So what are we doing here? We are asking them to express self-affirmations. What is it that my teacher could possibly love about me when she knows I have all these problems? So you get them to think about themselves in a positive way. And then you have the students go around the class or go around the Zoom room asking other students the same question. But you do have to repeat it at least twice. And you do have to say, yes, that's what I like about you, but it's not what I was thinking at this moment in time. but it's a very, very beautiful belonging kind of exercise. And open, if you can, different anonymous boxes like post boxes that they can put their complaints or suggestions or what we would like more of in our lessons with you. Post these suggestions in the box and really promise yourself you're going to look at them and you're going to act on them. Principle 3, develop emotional resilience. How do we do that? We're struggling with it in ourselves, but create time and space to journal their emotions. Provide prompts, for example, write down one thing you're grateful for. Write down something somebody said to you that was nice today. I used to have a grouse group in my first job, not with the specific needs students, with 36 16-year-old girls who were really bad girls. And I used to get them in a circle on a Friday afternoon. And I used to say to them, okay, you can say anything in this circle that you are angry about, that you are very happy about, that you love, as long as you don't swear, as long as you don't mention anybody by name, and as long as you don't hurt anybody. And that worked like magic. I was able then to get the amount of work I wanted to get out of them for the other 4 periods. It was like magic. And I thought of it in my first year of teaching. So you have to find ways of being a bit of a foxy lady or a bit of a foxy man. And you have to find ways around your students so that you make them feel good about themselves and you make them feel good about your lesson. And then strategy 2, set up online peer learning networks to build space for connection or have them grouped together after school to do their work. I know that doesn't always work because it's tricky, especially in some of the cities that we are living in. But things are possible, if you want to. So if you want to learn all about this in more detail from the toolkit itself, here it is. You can work with groups of your teachers in your school. And if you want to ask me anything, you can go through the British Council. You can go through Vicky in Argentina, Liliana in Colombia, and Graham in Mexico. And if you're in any other cities, you can write to me to my website. So there is my website, www.eltsusanhilliard.com, and I will try to help you. So thank you, danke schön, merci beaucoup, gracias, any other thanks that I know how to say, obrigado, I know. So thanks to you, the teachers who are here today. Thanks to the British Council, Argentina, Mexico, and Colombia for getting this together so that we can all share what we know and where we want to go. Thank you, Graham, for hosting me. I'll stop my share now and hope that you've all got down my website.
Thank you, Susan. That was very interesting. Lots of great ideas there. Lots of great information. I'd like to start by, well, first of all, I'd like to encourage people to write any questions they might have or any comments about what Susan's just shared with us in the Q&A section that you'll find at the bottom of the screen. I'd also like to say that I put the link, as well as a QR code that Susan shared, I put the link to the toolkit in the chat. And the toolkit has been designed, as you saw Susan go through it, to be modular. It's been designed for you to be able to use it individually. So you can download the whole thing. You can download each of the modules. You can go through it in your own time. You can use it as a reference guide, or, and this is a really good way of making use of it, you can get together with colleagues and form a little group and work through it together, either online or face to face. And as Susan said, although the design was originally thought of for teachers teaching remotely, it's just as effective for, and has lots of information for teachers working face to face and who want to make their classrooms more inclusive. So we do recommend that you take the time and dig into it. There's a rich variety and wealth of resources there for you. So Susan, I've got just one question for you from one of the participants. Some of the other questions we've been able to answer just with chats, etc. So Victoria Rodriguez de Vera asked the following. As I've said before, my students have not responded well to me asking them to explain or rephrase the instructions I've given them. How do you motivate them to speak up in that case?
That's a lovely question. It really goes back to the question, how do you get them to open their mouths? And how do you get them to think? And how do you get them to process information? And that takes time. It's a process, basically. And I think we have to remember that we are working with students who are speaking in their second language and may not feel very confident, and they may not have been taught to do those things in their own language. So I think this is somewhere where we really have to work very, very carefully and very strategically, because you can't just say, love physics and expect them to love physics. You can't say, love reading and expect them to love it. You have to teach them to love it by the way you teach it, by the way you use strategies, by the way you facilitate. And I think you start off with very simple instructions to begin with. For example, I started out giving my students it was first year secondary, and they couldn't do it either. So I started giving them very, very simple instructions like, take off your sweater, turn it inside out and put it back on again. Okay, what did I ask you to do? And they all look at me as though I'm crazy. Why is she saying this to me? But this is a form of scaffolding. So then you get them to tell it you, and they will always tell it you back if it's a bit crazy. They like that. And then I say, take off your sweater, turn it inside out, hold it in your right hand and touch the floor. So they all look at me again, but they all do it. As soon as you put something, remember the muscles have memory. And if you get something into the muscles in language teaching, it will go into the memory much better. Ask any sports teacher. Their students remember the rules of the game because they use muscle memory all the time. When you learn to drive a car, you learn to drive it forever. You may get a bit rusty if you stop doing it, but you learn it forever. So I would say to you, what was the teacher's name, Graham? Claudia?
Victoria.
Victoria. I would say to you, Victoria, take baby steps before you take giant strides. Be patient with your students and try to scaffold it. Don't just expect them to do it right from the word go. They won't do it like that. They have to be led into it. They have to be brought with you through the way you facilitate anything like that. It's a kind of methodology that demands that you work as a facilitator rather than as an instructor, because working as an instructor just doesn't work in this case. So have I answered your question, Victoria?
I think you have, because she hasn't mentioned otherwise. So I think that was very good. Thank you, Susan. Last chance for people. If you have a question for Susan or would like to make a comment, then please post it in the Q&A section. While we're waiting a little while, just like to say thank you, everybody, for coming along. And there's lots of, I don't know if you had the opportunity to have a look, Susan, but there's a lot of appreciation in the chat box
Thank you.
from a lot of teachers thanking
What
you for the
noticed
ideas.
is that I can't save the chat. Is that something that you can change?
I'm not sure. I don't think we can save the chat. I think the only way of doing it is to copy and paste bits out of it.
Okay. I usually save the chat, and then when I've got a little bit more time, I go through it. Because I can't go through the whole thing now.
Of course.
Thank you for your good wishes, everybody. That's very, very nice. And I see that some people have really appreciated it. Thank you.
We do have another question now. Cecilia Ocampo has said, any suggestion for work-life balance being a teacher?
For teachers, that's such a good one. And I'm a bit of an alcoholic. No, I am a bit of an alcoholic, but I'm a bit of a workaholic more than that. And I have found it very difficult to balance everything. But I think we all know from the pandemic days that we've got to be more aware of that. And I think some of us, especially the ladies, sorry to say this, Graham, but female teachers often have a terrific number of responsibilities, you know, that they have to juggle. I used to think that the word woman was equivalent to the word guilt, because we always feel guilty when we're working. We feel guilty because we're not with the family. We're with the family. We feel guilty because we're not working. And it really is, yes, thanks, Maria Inez. Don't say that. We really have to do that. And I think the only way you can do it is by working on yourself and by trying to find out what really makes you feel relaxed and what really makes you feel good, and forcing yourself. You actually have to force yourself to take that time off. One of the things that I have found in my career so far, and I am still carrying on actually, is that students will help a lot once you do reach out to them and you get them in. And they can design a lot of the stuff rather than you. And that saves you a lot of time. Give them much more responsibility for what goes on in the classroom. And that really helps. But I must admit, I have found it very hard because I'm passionate about my job, and I'm passionate about getting students to love learning, because I have this feeling that if you can get them to, you know, embrace it, you can get them to love it. And it's that embracing which is so hard to get through for some students. I'm not pretending it's easy, but it's possible.
Thanks, Susan. I think a very important thing that I've come to learn as far as work-life balance is to really make sure that you find some time, even if it's a small amount of time, just for yourself, some personal sort of time where all you do is do something just for yourself, and probably something that takes you away from both work, computer, and home. So going for a walk, I think, even if it's only for 20 minutes, etc., is really healthy, I think. Definitely, and try to make it part of your daily routine. There's another question. Another question from Eleni Dogeko. Apologies, Eleni, for mispronouncing your surname. I'm sure I've done that. And Eleni asks, what can we do with groups that are too noisy and overexcited?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's always happens if you're doing speaking skills, drama, games in the classroom. And again, I think it's more or less giving the same answer. It's a process, and you've got to be able to get your. This is what I always aimed for in my classroom: silence, noise, silence, noise, silence, noise. And I taught my students to do think time from, say, top primary all the way through secondary, through adulthood, so that I always gave them something to think about. And we all had to be silent, including me, because, you know, we teachers are not very good at being silent. We often feel that we're being paid to talk because we're teaching a language. So we have to be silent as well. And we have to give them time to think. Because I learned this from Meryl Swain in Canada, bilingual French, English expert, actually. She said, we spot the good students in our classrooms right at the beginning. And we tend to want our lessons to be very dynamic. And so we ask questions, and the first students to put their hands up, and it's always the same ones, we say, yes, you. And we shouldn't do that, because we are denying all the rest of them time to think. So give them time to think. Let them know when they've got to be silent, when they've got to be thinking, and when they can be noisy, and have signals to show them how to do it. I always use this. I stand still, I zip it, lock it, put the key in my pocket, and I hold my hand up. And I expect all the students to do the same. Stand still, zip it, lock it, put the key in your pocket, put your hand up, and wait in silence. And that has worked, has worked really well for me. And I was just going to say, I've even had parents doing it at parents' meetings, which is a miracle. So
Wonderful.
I use the word training purposefully, because everything we do is training. And I say that, I know people don't like it, but if you don't train them, how are you ever going to be able to teach them? How are you ever going to be able to reach them? You are the leader, you are the professional. You've got to know what you want your classes to smell like, taste like, sound like, feel like, and what's the one I've been missing? Look like. So you've got to have the 5 senses in your muscle memory as well, so that every lesson you are aware of this. This is what I want my lesson to be like. And when it's not like that, go out and write your journal. I've always written a journal, and I've always read my journal back to myself. And I have found so many insights in my journal. In fact, I taught journal writing to teachers at the Professorado, at the Teacher Training College here for 3 years. And they found it very, very hard at first. But then afterwards, they understood. They understood. It was a pleasure, Eleni. Eleni is coming here from Athens, Greece.
Of course, yes, I do recognize the name actually. So thank you, Eleni, for your question. Unfortunately, Susan, we've run out of time. So I'd like to thank you, our fabulous speaker, for having joined us for this great presentation and all of your wonderful ideas. Thank you very much, Susan. A huge thanks also to our participants. And please remember to complete the attendance survey if you'd like to get a certificate for today's session. And Vicky has put the link into the chat just now. And now we're happy to announce our second ELT week in Argentina will take place from the 19th to the 23rd of February next year, 2024. And you can register now scanning a QR code, which we will share on the screen, and save the date. And there's an early registration link in the chat as well. And we're going to play now a video to whet your appetite. So I'll be back after that.
From different provinces, as well as with our speakers. Join the conversation. Sign up now.
For the ELT week next February 19th to the 23rd, 2024. And with this session, we are concluding
and provides useful
the ELT talk series for this year. But please stay tuned. Make sure you keep an eye on our social media and the British Council website. And remember to check the YouTube channel for all of the recordings as well. In case you've missed any of them, I'm sure you'll find something that you will find useful there. Thanks again, Susan, for joining us today. It's been a great pleasure. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.